We've got a coronal mass ejection happening as we make the video once again. A small reduction in solar activity. And lots more to cover on today's Daily Space Weather. I'm your host, Dan, a.k.a. smAsho, coming at you from the Smash News Network, least busted, naming news. Let's check out some more imagery here of the closest star. Here's the colorized magnetogram to see lots and lots of magnetic organization and activity. Well over 100 sunspots, still the official number. The coronal mass ejection came from this group of sunspots over here in the southwest. We'll get to it momentarily. First, a close-up of sunspot 2916. It's got some spectacular magnetic fields here. We'll put that on loop for you there so you can get a view of that the past 24 hours approximately. The largest sunspot currently on the Earth-facing portion of the Sun. Here it is in 171 angstroms. And this is yet another sunspot group capable of producing large flares. Here's the group that's produced some C-class flares, nearly M-class flares, and the coronal mass ejection came from this area. Again, we'll show you that a little bit later. The radio flux has come down 10 points to 130. There's the one-year graph of the radio flux and sunspot number and AP index. Sunspot number is the red line. The black line here is the radio flux. You can see we've got over 140 sunspots showing yesterday's data and a late arrival of the December 20th coronal mass ejection. So we didn't see any signal. And NOAA has just simply moved the forecast to late tonight on Christmas Eve. So expecting a little bit of geomagnetic storm later in the day today. Apparently the speed calculation for the coronal mass ejection was off by quite a bit, about a full 24 hours there. Perhaps we'll see some Christmas auroras, or perhaps some Christmas Eve auroras. Let's look at earthquakes over the past 24 hours. No major quakes. We'll just scroll up the list here. If we miss anything, leave us a comment. So nothing in a 6 magnitude range here over the past 24 hours as far as earthquakes go. There is one there in a very desolate part of the ocean there, the Pacific Antarctic Ridge. Probably nobody around to feel that 5.1 magnitude quake. There was a quake in Nevada also. It was only a 3.5 magnitude. We won't worry about it. Anyway, that's your list of the earthquakes. I think the largest was actually this one, a 5.3 in Yemen. Not our favorite vacation spot. Let's look at volcanoes. Piton de la Fournaise has been producing some effusive eruptions. That's an image of Piton de la Fournaise. And let's check the list here at volcanodiscovery.com. Ground deformation being shown there from Fagradalsfjall in southern Iceland. On the Reykjanes Peninsula, 2,000 earthquakes have been detected over the last 17 hours. The most likely scenario of an imminent eruption is considered in the Geldingaldir eruption site. GPS instruments detected a rapid ground formation. So perhaps an uptick happening there in Iceland, likely an uptick happening there. Shivaluch also erupting, that's on the Kamchatka Peninsula. It's exploding, producing a flight level 150. It's a 15,000 foot ash plume, 7,000 foot ash plume over Subanose Jima. And the Halema Uma'u crater has become active again in the Kilauea magma system. So lava coming back into the Halema Uma'u crater. We won't worry about the video footage, but you can find a link there at volcanodiscovery.com's Volcanoes Today's page. Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai, the Tongan volcano, is the world's largest volcano at the moment, exploding, producing a 40,000 foot plume of volcanic ash. Please don't pole vault the caldera. It could be unhealthful, and we need the views on YouTube. Samisa Pochnoi, occasional eruptions there on the Aleutian Islands from Samisa Pochnoi. Fuego exploding, flight level 150 from Fuego over Guatemala, Nevado del Ruiz. Confirmed some internal magmatic tremors happening at Nevado del Ruiz in Colombia. It's producing a 19,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. The alert level remains at yellow. I don't know how an exploding volcano producing a 19,000-foot ash plume is at a yellow alert level, but we'll leave that to the Colombians. Sangay is exploding, flight level 200. It's a 20,000-foot ash plume over Ecuador from Sangay, and a 15,000-foot ash plume over Ecuador from Revenador as it explodes as well. Sabancaya, continuous emissions over Peru from Sabancaya. Nevados de Chilean, volcanic ash not detected. Don't assume it's not erupting. And plan a party at the base of the volcano. Piton de la Fournaise, building a spatter cone there above the eruptive fissure. Small lava fountains. And a 2,200 meter long lava flow happening there at Piton de la Fournaise. Don't pole vault that caldera either. Today's featured product is, and you can link to our Redbubble shop below the video, it's Universum Liberate, the Galactic Special Forces. When earthly special forces, or perhaps space forces, or the Galactic Federation itself is not producing the results you'd prefer, perhaps become a member of the Galactic Special Forces. Yeah, the Galactic Special Forces. Our motto is Universum Liberate. To quote Geddy Lee, if I could wave my magic wand, I'd set everybody free. So Universum Liberate, all humans yearn for freedom and liberty, despite acting like they prefer to be told what to do and having no clue what to do. Universum Liberate. Welcome to the Neo Renaissance. You can find links to that on our homepage as well, smAsho.com. It's the smAsho merch link. Also, if you click the Smash team, you can find continued free publicly visible posts through the old year. Thanks to our gold and silver Smash team members for keeping these videos in existence. We replaced Patreon with something vastly superior. Here's a teaser. It's smashomash.com/smashteam, where you'll see information nobody else gets to see unless you visit the website. So it's exclusive in the same way Patreon is, just vastly superior. Next, looking at magnetic data, here's the GOES magnetometers over the past 3 days, and not a lot to say about that, except Earth is now in a North Pole-oriented current sheet, as you can see here on the top view ecliptic plane field plot. This data is derived from 51 ground-based magnetometers, the National Sunspot Observatory, 51 ground-based magnetometers, as well as magnetometers on stereo A and stereo B. It's a very important data set when analyzing solar activity. We'll also show this from the line of sight perspective and the solar magnetogram. There you go. Lots of activity indeed. Solar maximum-like activity if you're talking about solar cycle 24. Next, the line of sight coronal hole plot, and you can see large transequatorial coronal holes of North Pole orientation here, rotating into the Earth-facing zone. Those are likely to be geo-effective, so there's another bit of space weather headed our way, likely a high-speed coronal hole wind stream coming in about 5 days. Here's the 193 angstroms imagery from the SDO, and you can see this coronal hole we were just talking about, this North Pole-oriented one right here in the just north of the equator there. It's pretty visible there in that wavelength from the SDO. And we've thrown in some 94 angstroms wavelength here just as an early Christmas present here on Christmas Eve. So there's the northern hemisphere and 94 angstroms. A few minor brightenings happening there, but the majority of the activity is in the southern hemisphere. So there's the animation of that. Again, the coronal mass ejection that we were covering earlier. We're going to show you this. It came out of this series of sunspots over here. And don't be surprised to see some major flares come out of this sunspot 2916. It looks like there's another active region rising here behind sunspot 2916. We'll keep an eye on it. When I say ion, pardon the pun. So here's your flare probability in detected sunspot groups. Very, very high level of solar flares likely. Don't be surprised to see an X-class flare, and so on. We were getting up to 10 different named sunspot groups there for a moment. Quite high levels of activity indeed. Next, the GOES X-ray flux over the past 3 days. And you can see some significant C-class flares happening here just today. Again, don't be surprised to see an M-class or an X-class flare, or multiple ones for that matter. No big spikes in the proton flux here, no relativistic particles sent from large solar flares, and the real-time solar wind features a subsiding solar wind speed here over the past 24 hours. Solar wind speed down to more normal levels here now. As the coronal hole high-speed stream subsides, current solar wind velocity 429 kilometers a second. Solar wind density quite low here at around 5 protons per cubic centimeter. Geospace magnetosphere movies are back, and here's a measure of the geospace earthly geomagnetism. KP index currently at 2. So here's our geospace magnetosphere movie showing 4 hours of data magnetohydrodynamic pressure. This data was down for a few days. Now it's back. And for that, we thank you, University of Michigan. Somebody must have stopped by the server and realized something was wrong, but in any case, there is the last 4 hours of Earth's geomagnetic moment from space. We'll let that play through to make sure that you get the latest data. Little minor magnetic perturbation showing up there, a little increase in the magnetohydrodynamic pressure. Otherwise, pretty smooth. The scale there is nanopascals magnetohydrodynamic pressure. Next, Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. This one is in nanotesla magnetic flux density. And nothing too crazy going on here. Again, the geomagnetic storm conditions were postponed. Somebody must have miscalculated the speed of the coronal mass ejection from the 20th. NOAA now expecting it later today on Christmas Eve. And you may see this light up. It also shows you where auroras and power outages are likely, the geospace ground magnetic perturbations map. Next, a diagram of the solar system. We're going to show you a 7-day forecast. We've currently got a gibbous waning. We're going to see a crescent waning by the end. There's where things will be on New Year's Eve in the solar system, as the sun is just crossing the galactic plane at the moment from the perspective of Lehigh Valley, which is fairly meaningless. It's just the Earth's perspective versus the sun versus the galactic plane. It doesn't really mean anything's going to happen or anything like that. It has to do with all kinds of things: Earth's position, Earth's rotation, and the sun's position in the galaxy. We've also got a Mars rising ahead of the sun. If you've got a low horizon, you may see Mars rising ahead of the sun. There's a great Venus-Jupiter thing going on at at sunset also tonight. We got a great image on our Instagram page. Check out Instagram, instagram.com/smashamash. Also, there's a moon set progressing, I think. There we go, the moon setting here. That's in-the-sky.org's all-sky chart, if you're wondering what that is. Put in your location, you can make it yourself. And here's the coronal mass ejection that's unfolding as we make the video. So we're going to show the view from stereo A and Lagrange point 1, the LASCO C2. So the stereo A coronagraph is on the left here. The LASCO C2 is on the right. And you can see this coronal mass ejection right here, looking like it's going to miss Earth to the southwest. So again, coming out of that active region in the southwest, that's the latest imagery from that. And if that becomes an Earth-facing coronal mass ejection, we'll cover it. Today's cosmology segment is just postponed. We're just showing the astronomy picture of the day, the Crab Nebula. So there's a pulsar in the middle of that. And about 1,000 years ago, this thing became very bright in the night sky. That was in the year 1054. So that's only located 6,500 light years away in the constellation Taurus. And it's actually in the opposite direction of Deneb. The sun is actually moving away from the constellation Taurus and toward the star Deneb. So this is sort of the tail end of the sun's local environment here, the exciting Taurus constellation, which contains the Crab Pulsar and the Crab Nebula. Let's take a look at a non-random object. It's Cygnus X3. These are the X-ray transient outputs from Deneb, the star toward which the sun is moving. So that's the That's the Cygnus arm of the galaxy. And anyway, that's the X-ray transients from Cygnus X3, one of the only known, if not the only known, cosmic ray point source on Earth. Or I should say in the sky. Keep in mind those are not cosmic rays, those are photons in the X-ray frequency. Make sure you check out our other cosmology segments. There are over 200 of them on our playlists at youtube.com/smAshomash/playlists. Next, checking on charging hazards, and we don't see any charging hazards, so let's move on to the 1-year chart of the electron flux, and we're in electron storm territory here. We're seeing electron warnings light up. That's the 1-year chart, and here is the 3-day chart, and you can see we've just gone into warning levels here, both on the GOES 16 and 17. Expect some communication errors and so forth, as there are a lot of electrons through which to communicate, and that can cause some errors. So here's the forecast. NOAA expecting a downtick here. I would say if the coronal mass ejection arrives at this moment, that's I won't argue with it. I think that's an appropriate forecast by NOAA. The green boxes are the forecast, the yellow diamonds are the observation. Next, we're going to show you the total electron content forecast, and it is all over the place. Expect massive GPS errors in inopportune spots. So here's the total electron content forecast, and yeah, massive GPS errors likely over places like North America, for example. Also Antarctica, seeing huge GPS errors at nighttime. Just a really large blob of dense electrons here showing up in Earth's inner Van Allen belt. So that's your total electron content forecast. When your GPS satellite has to communicate with your handset through a lot of electrons, you can see errors of thousands and thousands of miles. We'll also show you the ionosphere, which is also showing some anomalies. So located at about 300 kilometers of altitude is the F layer of the ionosphere. And here it is in vibrational frequency, courtesy Australian Government Bureau Meteorology. And we'll just let that play through. We'll bring up the latest image and show you the anomaly gram as well. So here is the anomaly gram showing anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. Continued anomalies around the Drake Passage here. Some wild swings of high and low frequency. The Drake Passage, a weird spot of the planet where the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans attempt to reach static and indeed thermal equilibrium through this narrow passage known as the Drake Passage. It's a weird place indeed. Anyway, here's the latest image. That's 1400 universal time on the ionogram. Here's 1400 universal time on the anomalogram, and let's do bonus features. So here's the latest data from the ground-based solar observatory at Cerro Tololo, Chile. Coronal mass ejection just occurred. Coronal mass ejection warning remains in effect, folks. Solar flare warning remains in effect. We may see M and X class flares coming out of some of these active regions. Check out the size of these filaments down here. Don't be surprised to see one or more of those ejecting. Again, there is a coronal mass ejection unfolding. As we make the video, you can see a little bit of the evidence of that. Here's the GOES 16 SUVI imagery, which may show it as well. It's quite good at showing prominences because it has a wider field of view than the SDO does. So it shows you less detail while you're zoomed in, but it shows you more detail like prominences when you're zoomed out. Some prominences down here in the southeast as well. Still very high solar maximum-ish levels of activity. Here's the latest intensity gram and latest magnetogram. We'll give you a quick tour of the area where this most recent coronal mass ejection came from. Quite complex. Some sunspots did degrade. Mostly degradation there. Although 2916 is still quite large and still quite in charge, at least of the southeastern portion of the closest star. Here are the northern hemisphere sunspot groups. And those are nothing to shake a stick at either. We'll show the fields in close-up as well. This is the 4048 resolution view. And check out the fields of sunspot 2916. Yowzers. That is serious. And here are the northern groups. Let's close out with some close-ups. Here's the northern hemisphere. That's the last day in 171 angstroms. And here's the southern hemisphere where most of the activity is going on. We'll zoom out to show a full disk view and close this thing out. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. And may that solar wind be at your back.